Hey everyone, in this video we're gonna sketch an Irish elk, which is one of the largest deer species who have ever walked the planet. These giants stood even taller than today's moose, with antlers that could span up to 3.5 meters wide. We'll be working from a photo of a skeleton, which is a very good way to practice anatomy and get an understanding of how the body is built beneath the surface. By the end of this tutorial, you'll have a stronger grasp of how to use skeletons as reference for your own creature drawings. So let's get started. When I started drawing, I like to begin with loose lines and rough shapes rather than jumping straight into the details. That helps me keep the sketch fluid and natural. But sometimes I need a bit of an anchor, so I'll draw the head with slightly more detail than I probably should at this stage. And that's totally fine. Everyone's process is different, and as long as you understand why you're doing it, you're not breaking any rules. The rules are more like guidelines anyway. Once I move to the rest of the body, I shift back into drawing simple rough shapes and just let the sketch flow. If I were to add more detail here, the whole drawing would quickly feel too stiff. I like to think of the body as a kind of mannequin frame, almost like one of those wooden dolls where each body part can be moved or detached. This approach helps me break the anatomy down into manageable, flexible pieces before I refine it later. Once I'm done building the framework, it's time to move on to the outline. I've mentioned this in other tutorials, but I like to think of this step as adding clay to a wire skeleton. The framework gives you the structure, but the outline is where the form starts to feel solid, where the body begins to take shape. If you look closely at the skeleton, you'll notice something interesting along the spine. Right where the neck meets the back, the vertebrae have all these tall upward points. That detail is important to keep in mind when we sketch the body, because it affects the silhouette and the way the muscles sit over the bones. I'm also going to change the pose slightly from the reference photo. Instead of copying it exactly, I'll let the elk take a step forward. It adds a bit more life and makes the drawing feel more dynamic. Now it's time to tackle the antlers. It's probably the most intimidating part of the Irish elk. These giants could have the antlers stretching up to 3.5 meters wide, making them one of the largest set of antlers of all animals. When you're sketching them, it's good to know that antlers are meant to grow symmetrical. That's what's in their genetic code. But in reality, you often see them uneven. Injury, parasites, illnesses, nutritional deficiencies, frost, hormone levels are all factors that can influence the antlers' growth and cause them to be asymmetrical. And while the genetic blueprint is symmetrical, abnormalities in their DNA can occur, which also causes antlers to grow uneven. So asymmetrical antlers are completely natural, and it actually adds character to the animal. And of course, with antlers this massive, you wonder how the elk could even carry that weight. The answer lies in the incredible muscles along the neck and shoulders. These strong support structures are what makes these antlers possible, and they're important to keep in mind when sketching the proportions of the body. To wrap up the sketch, I'm adding just a little bit of shading, but not too much, because I plan to go over this one later with Indian ink. But if your goal is to simply practice drawing from skeletons, this is basically where you can stop. I really recommend doing this kind of exercise often. Sketching from skeletons forces you to break an animal down to its foundation. It trains your eye to see how the bones support the body, how weight is distributed, and how the movement is possible. Once you understand that structure, adding muscles, skin, or even creating fantasy creatures becomes so much easier, because you're building on a solid base. And just a tip, when practicing from skeletons, don't aim for a perfect drawing every time. Instead, set a timer and do quick studies. The repetition will teach you more than one fully polished piece. And that's it for this Irish elk sketch. I really hope this tutorial gave you a clearer idea of how to use skeletons as a foundation for your own drawings. Practicing this way really helps you understand anatomy better, and it's something that I recommend coming back to often. And if you would like to see more in-depth real-time tutorials in which you can follow along with each step, I have those available on my Patreon. You can find the link in the description of this video. Thank you so much for drawing with me today, and if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you with the next one.